Hello again. When I lived in Scotland, I used to do a lot of running, as you probably know. And one of the best runners there, who'd won the Scottish National a few times and runs for Scotland and also probably run for Great Britain, was alleged that all he ate was porridge. Well, he was a bit of an oddball, but maybe you could see that, an elite athlete who's got quite a character, only eating porridge, you could see sort of how a fad diet might develop. As it turned out, there was another rumour going around that he got scurvy. And I think, both are probably quite believable because I think he did have an eating disorder as well. So from this perhaps quite extreme example or ridiculous example, you can see how if somebody's successful and they go by a certain diet, then that might be deemed to be the optimal diet. And with diet and nutrition, like with training or anything in sport really, there's no magic formula. Most people agree that high intensity exercise is best fueled by carbohydrates. There are some arguments by people like Tim Noakes that you can fuel everything using fat, but the consensus at the moment seems to be that it's better to use carbohydrates to fuel high intensity work. So if you're doing interval training on one day, it's better to have some carbs. Certainly one of the people that I coach, he did a few tests. He tried to do his interval training fasted first thing in the morning, and he found that if he had some carbs, a gel or something, that helped him do a higher quality session, and the response and stimuli would have been better from the high quality session for the higher intensity training. Even if you're an ultra endurance cyclist, it's worth doing intervals, and in the winter you might want to do some Zwift races to see how they go, and in that case you're going to perform better and enjoy it more if you're properly fueled. We're talking about training here, not racing, so what you're looking for is something healthy and sustainable so that you can consistently put the training in, make the small gains over time to create big gains. And I'm not a nutritionist, a dietitian, although I have a lot of relevant experience. I've been coaching now for since 2009, so that's getting on for 15 years. And over that time I have worked with some very good dietitians, particularly Nigel Mitchell, who's written a good book. It's quite old now, but it's got some good advice in it and some good recipes. It's called Fueling the Cycling Revolution. Another book I like is Anita Bean's book, The Complete Guide to Sports Nutrition. So in terms of nutrition, to sustain a good level of training and build your fitness, the first thing to do is get enough calories. Make sure you're eating enough. Because if you don't eat enough, you can't fuel what you're doing, you can't recover from what you're doing, and therefore your body won't build up the muscle adaptation and fitness that you need to go on to the next level. Once you're eating enough, then you can look at your macronutrients. Firstly, I think I'd look at the protein intake, because protein's important and your body can't really manufacture protein. If you eat meat, it's not so difficult. You're getting a good range of proteins and you get quite a lot of protein. So if you eat meat, you might not have a problem. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan like me, then you have to be a bit more careful. You have to look into it and make sure you're getting enough protein and you're getting the right sorts of protein together at each meal. And with protein, it's best to take some with every meal. You can't just have a lot of it with one meal and then not bother for the rest of the day. You need to be eating it consistently and regularly and frequently. So you need at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, and that's really the minimum. Most people recommend between 1.2 and 1.4 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, and on the higher side if you're a bit older. In fact, in Peter Attia's recent book on longevity, he's recommending 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. At least that's what I've been told by one of my friends. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but it's on my reading list. So that's obviously quite a lot. So even if you eat meat, you have to eat quite a lot. There is some argument for having a protein supplement. So having a protein shake once a day can give you that little top up and make sure that you're getting enough protein to meet your needs. Because a little bit more doesn't do any harm, but a little bit less can make a difference, certainly in my personal experience and in the people that I've worked with. Next, you want to make sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates to fuel your high intensity training. So that's a big one, and you need carbohydrates to recover from your training. So even if you're doing a long training ride or a long training run, it's better to have some carbohydrate. And also you need carbohydrates to recover from training sessions, make the adaptations that you need. Your body uses carbohydrates as fuel. Your glycogen stores are more easily replenished by eating carbohydrates. And then you want to make up your remaining calories from fats. But don't have a super low fat diet, because that's not really the way to go. I mean, it was a fad, I guess, a few years ago, and our example of the the athlete who only ate porridge, he might have had a very low-fat diet and also probably a fairly low protein and and not a very nutrient-rich diet. But a balanced diet is really what you're looking for. Plenty of protein, plenty of carbohydrates, and a reasonable amount of fat. And certainly plenty of calories. How many calories do you need? Well, that's quite difficult, and it's a very individual, because you've got a certain base level of exercise that you do each day on top of the training that you do. And I try to split it up. So what I do is I use a base metabolic rate that I might take from MyFitnessPal or Garmin, or just look online and see what a base number of calories for somebody of your age and weight. And then if you do exercise on top of that, you can take the number of calories from your exercise app. So if you Garmin will tell you, or Training Peaks, or whatever you're using, I'll give you an estimate of how many calories you're using. If you add that to your base metabolic rate, then you've got your number of calories for the day. And if you go with that for a couple of weeks, if you're putting weight on, then you're eating too much. If you're losing weight, then you're not eating enough. I mean, it's just a simple way of checking it, but it works. And what I would do is adjust that base metabolic rate, the number of calories that you need as a baseline. And then if you do a lower or a higher exercise week, you've got that fluctuation that you can take account of just by adding on the number of calories you need onto that base level. So what I find to be the best way of doing it is to track what I'm eating for a week or two. It's very difficult to sustain for more than a couple of weeks, these diet trackers, even though they're quite user-friendly. I use MyFitnessPal, but I've tried a tool called Chronometer and Livestrong. So there are quite a few out there. MyFitnessPal works pretty well. It'll give you a breakdown of macronutrients. And then you can look at trends, see whether you're getting enough of each particular thing, make adjustments, carry on for a few weeks, do another check and make adjustments again. If you're gaining weight and you don't want to gain weight, you're eating too much. If you're losing weight and you don't want to lose weight, then you're not eating enough. So it's a fairly simple equation, but make sure you eat enough. That's really important. There's a lot of talk about when you should eat, whether it makes a difference when you eat. But my understanding is that unless you're training twice a day and you've got a very small window of opportunity to refuel between training sessions, then it doesn't matter too much when you eat or what you eat when, as long as you're eating protein with every meal, as I said previously. If you do have a short window of opportunity between training sessions, then you need to focus on recovery. So getting a carbohydrate-rich snack or meal quite soon after your training session to start the recovery process and include a bit of protein with that. And then keep snacking as you get to the next training session. You could treat the day as one big training session and make sure that you fuel properly for that. In terms of fasted training, well, it's quite convenient to train before your breakfast. So that can be quite a good way to train. But you have to bear in mind that there are risks involved if it's a long training session that you're doing early on, that you might not be able to recover if you want to train twice a day. I've got a good friend, an elite triathlon coach, and he said that with his squad, what he'd found was that when they did fasted training, they weren't able to refuel sufficiently to do the next training session at a sufficiently high quality. So they stopped doing fasted training. But a lot that was with their elite full-time athletes. So they could, they could get up, have their breakfast, do the training session, and then take time to recover. They weren't actually going to work. If you have to work full-time and you've got limited time to train, then just make it work for yourself and fuel as best you can. And if you're not able to fuel properly between training sessions, then you have to change what training sessions you do. If you're getting fitter on what you're doing, you're obviously doing the right things. If you're getting worse with what you're doing, then you're obviously doing the wrong things. So just test things regularly. And also bear in mind that if you're losing weight and you're getting better, it might not be that you're doing the right things. It might just be that you're losing weight and you're performing better because you're lighter. And it might be that you're under fuel. So that's an area where just because you're getting better, it might not be that you're doing something better. So the takeaways are, make sure you eat enough calories to fuel what you're doing. Make sure you eat enough protein to sustain the damage that you're doing to your body and allow it to adapt. Make sure you eat enough carbohydrates to fuel your activities, particularly your high intensity training. Have a good, healthy, balanced diet that includes some fat, some carbohydrates and some protein in sensible proportions. And keep doing spot checks. If you're improving, you're doing it right, unless you're losing weight, too much weight. And if you're not improving, then you're doing it wrong. Okay, I hope that helps, and I'll see you next time. Bye.